Okay, so good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can see three faces staring at you this morning and our title slide. So my name's Darren. I'm the Marketing Communication Manager here at Barley. We're working today with Perennial, very close partners of ours, have been for many, many years. And they've joined us today. We've got Helen and we've got Kate. Probably see them there. So obviously I'll introduce them shortly. Just going to go through some house rules really before we start. So the boring bit, but it's the important bit as well. For those that haven't used this webinar system before that Barley uses, you have got the option to send us a question during the proceedings. If you open your control panel, you'll see towards the bottom half of it, there'll be something called questions. It might be known as chat on your end, but if you use that, you can send in your question to us at any point. So I'm going to keep a close eye on that as Helen takes us through the presentation shortly. So please do ask us any questions as we go. Don't be afraid to ask. And obviously what I'll do is I will ask them anonymously. We said that word, we're practicing it all morning, but I'll ask them anonymously. And if anybody needs support or help afterwards and they don't want to air it live, then please do drop me an email. And I think Helen's got an end slide coming up, which is the details to contact Perennial. So if you do need support, then those details will be there. So please use that. Also use it if you can just see my mouth moving and not hear me speak. Obviously you won't be able to hear me say that, but hopefully you can use the questions if you've got technical difficulties as well. We're going to try and keep it to the hour. We've got obviously a couple of slides to take you through, so we're looking forward to that from Helen. Obviously Kate's here, Kate Cooney. So hi Kate. So she's joined us. I don't think Kate's presenting today, but Kate is available. She'll be listening in a bit like I will be really to answer any questions if they do come up. So thanks for joining us, Kate. And then really, before we hand over to Helen, who's our presenter, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us. This is part of Barley's sort of new restart and rebuild strategy, which is a fancy way of saying we're here for our members and we're supporting you in your business. Much like Perennial is, I think we're all doing a fine job. Hopefully we're all doing a fine job. The feedback we've had has certainly said that our members are finding it helpful and relevant, and they're really important words for us. So the help we're giving them is actually doing something for them and their business. And this webinar is just one part of that bigger puzzle about obviously supporting the mental health side of things, which when we did our research, our survey, the feedback was very clear. You wanted more guidance and support on mental health for your employees, hence today's presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Helen. So Helen, over to you. I'm going to disappear now, and I think Kate is as well, but we will be listening behind the scenes. All right. Thanks, everyone. Over to you, Helen.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you've all heard of Perennial. I am the head of casework, so that's the actual services team that work with people within the workforce. So we support, next slide, please, Darren.
I should have moved over, Helen. I don't know whether I'm seeing it's moved, but it's still stuck. Might be a slight delay. Sorry, everyone. We're just going to see if that it was working fine a second ago. It's always the way, isn't it? Let's just see if that moves through.
No, it's still the same on mine anyway. I don't know about anybody else.
Okay, that's strange. Sorry about that. Okay, let's just see if I can change the way we present this one. Right, let's see. Right, is that still the same, Helen? Are we still showing it as?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Let's try something a bit different. Right, let's try this instead.
Okay, well, Darren's trying to get the next slide up. Hopefully the others come up, otherwise you're going to be very bored looking at the same slide. Okay, hopefully you all know what Perennial does. We're the UK's only dedicated charity helping people in horticulture. So we help anybody who works in horticulture, every single aspect of the horticultural different workforce. We help people who are working in horticulture now. It's gone completely now, Darren. Back
Okay,
again.
there we go.
Okay,
There we
no,
go.
that's
There we
great.
go. Sorry, Alan. There we go.
Yeah, if you're retired from horticulture, if you're unemployed and your last job was horticulture, or if you're off ill or obviously furloughed or anything else like that under the current situation. Sometimes challenges will seem overwhelming, and sometimes you might think it's quite a small thing and it isn't something we would help with. We help whether it's a small issue or it's a big issue. If it's an issue for you, we're here to help. All our advice and support is free and it's confidential, and we support people, as you'll see further on, in varying ways, and that includes financial assistance. We can help from 17, 18. I think we've got one person who's 103. Next slide, please, Darren. Okay, so today we're talking about stress in the workplace. And I'm sure you've all got an idea of what you think stress is, but actually stress is the body's reaction when you feel threatened or under pressure. And stress is quite common, and some of us will say that actually we work better under pressure, we work better under stress. But sometimes it does help us to get through that daily life and keeps us going, but sometimes it can just all become too much and too much stress. And that's when it starts affecting our mood, our actual physical body, and then it has that knock-on effect of actually also affecting our relationships. And that can be personal relationships and work relationships. And sometimes it can move on to the point where people actually no longer feel in control. It can then start to make them feel anxious and irritable. And then their self-esteem drops, their confidence drops, and then it has a complete knock-on effect on the whole of their life. Next slide, please, Darren. So these in front of you is the symptoms of stress. This is one of the slides that you've got in your handout, so you can print this out if you want to. Symptoms of stress are caused by and present themselves in lots of different ways. Sometimes you might not even realise that's what it is. So if you get a headache or muscle tension or pain or even stomach problems, you might not necessarily put that down to stress at all. A lot of horticulture is very physical work. You could just well think it's that. A lot of people will realise that sometimes chest pain and a faster heartbeat is down to stress, but it could be other things as well. But it's recognising that those things can also be symptoms of stress. Difficulty in concentrating and struggling to make decisions, constantly worrying and being forgetful, they're all signs of mental stress. Now, some people will think, well, I'm not sleeping very well, so that's why I'm having difficulty concentrating and difficulty making decisions. But actually, the fact that you're not sleeping well can be due to stress. So seeing the symptoms of stress out here is hopefully for you to be able to recognise not only the symptoms in yourself, because let's be honest, you're important as well as your employees, is if you see something that changes in your staff, you've got your nice, laughable, affable person who suddenly becomes irritable and snappy, or somebody who looks completely shattered the whole of the time and clearly isn't sleeping. Somebody who starts smoking more, somebody who's suddenly eating all the time or just isn't eating at all. These changes in behaviour can all be symptoms of stress. And I think because of what we've been going through over, since the beginning of COVID, which is now 13 weeks into 13 weeks of lockdown, is that these symptoms are coming up for all kinds of people for all kinds of different reasons. So it's noticing them in people. People aren't necessarily going to come to you as an employer or a manager or the HR person, because they might not even realise that's what it is. It's you noticing as well, and providing that information to your employees for them to recognise it in their colleagues. Next slide, please, Darren. Okay, so this slide here is from the NHS. They have a fantastic webpage for concerned Every Mind Matters. This is a very short quiz. It literally is 5 questions, and it's now been tailored for COVID-19. And it allows on that link for people just to go in and answer the 5 questions. Then it provides top tips concerning the parts of stress that that person's actually put in. This is also in the slide. This would actually be good to just put up on the wall for people to realise that that's what they can go in. That can actually be a very positive thing that actually for your staff and even yourself if needed. And it is from the NHS. Okay, next slide, please, Darren. So these are stress busters. Some of them you probably already know, but we'll go through them anyway. The first one is split up big tasks. Sometimes people get stressed because their whole situation seems so overwhelming, too many things all at once, and they feel like they've got to actually, to be able to move forward with it, they've got to start tackling it all at once. But then that becomes so overwhelming, all it does is actually cause more stress. So it's splitting it up into small tasks to gradually reduce the task. In other words, think about it as like your to-do list, and you can gradually, that actual cathartic value of crossing something off the list. Then allowing yourself some positivity. If you've managed to cross one thing off your to-do list that day, that's a positive. You have achieved something. Challenge the unhelpful thoughts, and we'll be moving on in a minute of how you can actually do this, of how to start thinking about things differently. Be more active. I'm sure you've heard about how exercise helps. Exercise doesn't get rid of stress, but it helps people to give off nervous energy. It also gives off endorphins, which is a positive thing. It actually makes you feel more better in yourself. But it can make stress less intensive and make people think about things more clearer. Talk to someone. Some people do have friends they would trust to open up to and talk to. Some people have family who can do that with. But also a lot of people won't want to talk to family or friends or colleagues or their employer because they don't want to be judged, because they don't want to worry them, because they don't want to put, say, their job in jeopardy even. So there are lots of other ways of getting support out there, totally anonymous. And it is actually contacting different helplines. Perennial has a plug-in service for mental health, which I'll show you in a minute, which they can do, or they can contact the Samaritans if they feel really bad. There's varying different things that they can find. And plan ahead. Make a list of the things you want to do. How do you want to move forward? Make a plan. Don't make it too big a plan, but have a good positive result at the end and gradually see yourself moving forward. If you have something coming up that's stressful or you're getting stressed about it, try and be more organised about it, plan for it, feel in control. Control is one of the keys. If you feel in control, you're going to feel less stressed about it. Next slide, please, Darren. Okay. So, identifying the cause of stress. Now, you probably know all of these, but not everybody realises this is what's making them feel how they're feeling. If you know what's causing the stress, then you can make a plan and move forward. And a lot of these things are things that actually can be solved, that are solvable. These are actually a lot of things that we at Perennial within the services team work with people all the time concerning. We often say to people, what is it that wakes you up in the middle of the night? And they sometimes look at us as if, how did you know I wake up in the middle of the night? But people do. When they're stressed, they wake up in the middle of the night. They then start thinking and they start ruminating on things. Sometimes they start worrying about a bill or work or family because they're awake, but actually it can be that's causing the stress that makes them wake up. So it can be work. So it can be pressure at work. Not that anything's going bad. In fact, you could be doing really well, but you feel like you've got to prove yourself all the time. So you work longer hours and you do more and you do more. Or it could be the threat of unemployment, or it could be unemployment, or it actually could be coming up to retirement and actually you've always seen retirement as being a positive and you've looked forward to it, but as it actually comes to it, you then start thinking, am I doing the right thing? That can cause stress. Family. Clearly, relationship difficulties, divorce, caring for somebody. That can be a child, your wife, your parents. Financial issues, and I have to say the highest proportion of pre-COVID reasons why people contacted Perennial had an underlying issue of financial problems. So it can be unexpected bills. It can be that you're finding you're having to borrow money all the time. Due to COVID, we are finding now in the last couple of weeks, people who've been using credit cards more because they've had to, because furlough is fantastic, but if you was just about getting by on 100% of your income, getting by on 80% of an income can actually mean all of a sudden you don't have enough money to get by. So you're living on credit. And even though you're doing that, the thought of, at some point you're going to have to deal with that. That then can cause issues at work. That then can cause issues with the family. And in the long term, it can cause issues with health. Health, of course, that's probably more understandable for people, why people will get stressed. But actually, stress can cause an issue with health, as probably we all realise. But an illness, of being concerned about what's going to happen, having an injury, of being concerned about getting back into work. I've been off for so long now, I don't want to be off any longer. I want to get back into work. We get calls from people who are off, who it's particularly at the moment, we're going to have an operation, perhaps say for a knee replacement, that's all been put on hold. And now they're really concerned, I'm going to be off for a lot longer, will work take me back? And they're worrying about things possibly where you might think, well, that's not a problem, but for them it is, and that makes them wake up, that makes them worry, that makes them think, how am I going to manage on statutory sick pay? How much is that? How long will it last for? And of course, at the moment, and very sadly, more people are going through bereavements across the board than at any other time, certainly in all our lifetimes. So these are all stress, and as you can see, they can all interrelate. It's quite unusual for them to be one thing by themselves. But these are all things that Perennial can help with. Next slide, please, Darren. Okay, so about Perennial, how we help, support, advise and provide guidance. Now, I'm hoping some of you know some of what we do, but just in case you don't. Perennial helps in lots of different ways, and over the last period of COVID, we've been providing more advice and guidance probably than ongoing help and support because of the different situation. So many of you probably will know that we run a helpline. In the first 2 weeks of lockdown, so we're going back to the beginning of the end of March, our helpline, the calls to our helpline increased by 400%. Now that was calls from some people, say, who were self-employed, who were just suddenly couldn't work, or weren't sure if they could work, or how am I going to feed the family? I've suddenly got no money. My income stopped overnight. But actually, the majority of the calls were from people who've never contacted us before, probably thought they would never have to contact us. And their calls were about advice and guidance. How can I help my staff? What happens if I have to lay them off? So this was before the government announced furlough. If I have to lay them off, what can they access? What help can they get? What support can they get? Can you give me some quick guidance to be able to give it to them? Or we had calls from people that had subcontractors who were self-employed. Obviously, when furlough came out, they knew they could help their employees, but not the subcontractors. What advice could they do there? So we spent every day updating the government guidance that we receive continually. We usually get about 50 emails a day updating the guidance. We break that guidance down for what is needed for each individual question, and then we could provide everybody with an instant answer from the government, what they could claim, how they do it, and we sent it through by email as well, so they actually had it to look. Some people, that's all they wanted. That's all they wanted. They wanted to know what to do, how to do it, and then they could move on. Others we work with a lot more intensely. We also had calls from nurseries that didn't open to the general public, that just did the shows. Obviously, all the shows being cancelled with all their stock was dramatic for them, and we helped and supported them all the way through, and we're still working with some now. So the support that we can actually provide, we have money management. So we have a Money Matters page on our website, which has got tips and support of how to create savings, how to reduce expenditure, how to increase income. We have a budgeting tool. Some people know they're spending too much, but don't actually know where to make the cutbacks. And that gives them shows how their income, their expenditure, gives suggestions. So perhaps it might be, that's very high for a family of 4 on food. These are suggestions. These are suggestions on reducing your heating. We also have support for employment. So people perhaps who've become unemployed, lost their job, who want to start looking for a different career, but within horticulture, maybe they've got to a certain age and just are finding it physically too demanding. So that could be support with writing a CV. If you've not written a CV for 20 years, you perhaps wouldn't know where to start again now, because things have changed so differently. Where do you find a job now if you haven't tried to look for one for the last 10, 15 years? Can also be training. We also have a legal advice line. Just a point of reference, in the month of May, over 40% of calls to our legal advice line were concerning employment concerns. We provide benefits and debt advice from a specialist team. We also help access statutory support. So that can be perhaps if you're really concerned about your elderly parent, they're not managing with the stairs, they need some support to go in, we will access that, same with a disabled child. We will also signpost to specialist support. So if there's a real specific housing issue, we will contact shelter, for instance. We also have physio support to allow people to get back into work quicker. We also receive, we also have a plug-in service called the Big White Wall, which is very bespoke for mental health and well-being. And we'll move on to that next slide, please, Darren. Okay, so this is one of our plug-in supports for Perennial. This is totally free to anybody who works in horticulture. You don't have to go through our helpline to access this. You can just go straight onto our webpage and you can access this totally free. Big White Wall is a mental health support, as you can see, online. It's used by the NHS, it's used by the Armed Forces. It provides one-to-one support. It provides chat rooms so people can just actually offload how they're feeling. It's 24/7 and it is monitored continually by mental health professionals. Also on there are lots of tools and tests and techniques of how to reduce your stress, how to get your life gradually back in control, because getting life back in control, getting your debts under control, getting your housing under control, sorting your employment out, gets life in control, reduces stress. Also on here, totally free, are courses. So there are mental health and wellbeing courses, as in reducing stress. There's health style choices, so how to reduce your alcohol intake, how to reduce your smoking. There is also self-development courses, so help in managing your depression, help in managing stress and anxiety, managing procrastination, which actually a lot of people suffering stress, it's one of the key things that they do. They will keep putting things off. I'll deal with that later. I'm too tired now. I'm too busy now. I'll do that later. That's a key one and actually manifests itself quite a lot. And there's courses on there for managing panic attacks and actually managing social anxiety. It's one of the key things that people will stop going to places, will stop socially interacting. Mind you, we can't do a lot of that at the moment anyway, but if they're sort of removing themselves at work, is that more than just keeping a 2-meter distance? Are they not actually interaction at all? It's all there to support, totally anonymous. Nobody knows you've been on. No, you don't have to tell anybody, you just use it. It's, as I say, it's all totally free. If within the chat things come up where the mental health professionals actually monitor and feel they seem to be suffering more than just stress, they will actually take that person aside and have a specific just one-to-one chat, see if they need more support. So I won't say it's in-depth mental health support, but it certainly provides a lot of advice, information and support, and actually is good for people to use without having to worry to go through their GP. So it's a very good place to start. Okay, next slide, please, Darren. Okay, these are our contact details. I think in a minute Darren's going to do a poll, because we'd be interested to know which area of horticulture you work in, whether you're an employer or an employee or self-employed, because obviously it makes a difference. One of the key things that we are looking at doing specifically with Bali is bespoke short films about advice and information. Here we go, we've got a quick poll. If you wouldn't mind just answering those, if you can, it just gives us a little bit of an idea of what you do. And then if you've got any questions that you think I've touched on but haven't properly answered, please do feed those through. Okay. Lovely. Have we got the answers to that, Darren?
Yeah, we certainly have, Helen. So 83% commercial or business owner, so not self-employed, but they're a business. So 83% versus 17% as an employee, but no self-employed.
Okay, that's great. Okay, lovely. Thank you. Okay, so I think a takeaway from this, from the use of it, is to be honest with yourself as an employer or an employee, because this is about you, yourself, to look after yourself, but also keep an eye on your friends and your colleagues and your employees, that actually it's okay not to be okay, if that makes sense. When you go to work, go in with a smile, say good morning, start the day with a conversation, because you don't know what's happening with that other person that you're saying that to. You don't know how they're feeling that day. You don't know their story and what's going on with them. And actually that opening conversation not only makes them feel that, do you know what, somebody's bothered that I'm here, that I'm alive. And I know that might sound a bit ridiculous, but actually that can make a big difference. And you might get them in that 1 second when they actually feel like talking. Look at what is causing the stress. See if you can identify it. And then start making a plan to get support, to get advice, to get guidance. I would, of course, suggest that you contact Perennial or look on our website and see if there's a lot of information on there for you to be able to do it yourself. You can email us, there's a contact form. If you actually want to speak to a human being, please ring our helpline and we will support you. We can provide advice and information, and you can get it there and then if it's a bit more in detail. So I suppose you've got great job insecurity, you're really concerned you're going to lose your job, or you know you're going to lose your job, or you know you're only on a short-term contract and you're worried about your housing and you're worried about your bills and you're worried about your health. We're going to be working with you a lot more there. We're going to tailor the support to you. As an employer, as there is 83% of you, there is no simple solution here for you managing stress in the workplace. However, you do obviously have a duty of care to your employees. So encourage self-care, put in care measures and promote these regularly. So please do use those handouts and print them out, put them up in staff rooms, wherever, so people can see and recognise. If it's there all the time, they can have a look and might just realise one day that that is them. That's also the same for their colleagues to have a look. If you'd like posters for Perennial and you haven't got any, or you'd like some small help cards, please let us know, we will get some to you. But this is a continual thing. This isn't you doing this week and then forget about it. This has to be an ongoing thing, because everything that's coming forward at the minute is by the end of the year, we're going to have, well, there's been varying things. There's going to be an increase in debt. There's been said that there's going to be a tsunami of debt. There could be job insecurity. Obviously, we know in some areas there already is. There could also be a recession, because they've clearly been talking about that. That's going to have a knock-on effect on every single person. So look after yourself, look after your employees also. Give people time to talk. As an employer, your employees aren't necessarily going to come to you and say, I'm stressed, especially if they're concerned about their work. They might have no need to be concerned about their work. It's maybe how they perceive it. You might have to recognize in them that there's a change and allow them to talk, or try to get them to talk. I don't mean, get them in a room as an interview, because that's quite stressful in itself, of just having that opening conversation of, how are you doing? You look tired. You're all right. Now, it might be they've just had a baby and they've been up all night, but it might not be. But also, you've got to look after yourself. You'll be in a much better position to help others if you're in an effective and positive well-being yourself. So look after yourself as well. You can't pour from an empty cup, and that's not just supporting your staff with their mental health, it's the whole of your work. What I'd be very interested in now, I've no idea if there's any questions come in, but I would be interested, we've been talking to Bally over the last few weeks of doing these bespoke films, little films, short films about certain areas. Not long, you can get exactly what you need from it. It's exactly what it says on the title. We think we know what you want, but actually, if any of you have got some ideas of what you would want, so it might be a really short thing on how to identify stress. Do you feel like this? Have you got this issue? This is what you can do. Or it might be, I've just had a child, or my wife lost a job. How do we increase our income? How can we reduce our income? I'm about to retire. What do I need to do? I don't know, we're guessing. We'd rather have it from you and give you what you need and what you would like. Obviously, these are all free as well. Okay, I hope that's been of some use to you. It would be nice if we had a question, but if we don't, we'll see.
Brilliant, thanks, Helen. I'm just going to put myself back on the webcam. See, okay. There we go. Yeah, no, thank you for taking us through that. I think that was really, really interesting, actually. I think a lot of people that I've spoken about seem to think, as an employer, obviously remaining anonymous, but they sort of not bypass mental health, but they see it as it's an easy thing to measure and monitor. And of course, I know the well-being of my employees, but actually, just going through those slides, do they really, do they? And the whole point of mental health is it's not visible, not always visible. So,
exactly.
Exactly. And that's the big thing, isn't it? So I think. Go on, Helen,
and I also think, if your staff realise that this is that they can be open with it, or even if they can't be open about how they're feeling, that they know what to do. Once they've got that under control, or start to get a plan to move forward, actually employees that aren't stressed and anxious turn up to work on time. They're concentrating and they're cracking on with their work. Ones who are tired, ones who are stressed, ones who can't concentrate, who are procrastinating, you're not going to get, being a purely selfish, you're not going to get as much out of them. It's not going to be as a positive workplace, positive workforce. So it's a win-win, really, if we're going to be honest.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And from an employee's point of view, it's feeling supported doesn't necessarily mean a cuddly arm from your employer going, how are you? Let's make you a cup of tea. It's knowing where that employer's provided with them with how to recognise what to do and how to get that support. I think that's what it means.
And that's what it means. We did have a question coming, not on the webinar. I'm just a reminder to members listening, and obviously please do use that facility. If you don't, that's fine. Obviously you don't feel like you need to, but it is there. We'll hang on a few more minutes just on live on air, just for you to ask those questions. But in the meantime, we did have a question the other day from a member about employees who have been on furlough, who obviously starting to gradually come back, but a few of the members of staff were, I'm mentally affected by the process and I can't come back. But they wouldn't tell the employer why. Have you got any tips of how the employer could deal with that situation?
Okay, this isn't the first time we've had this question.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it can be that people have been dramatically affected by their mental health. You don't know whether somebody's passed away within their direct family or whether somebody's shielding and how they're coping with it. So as an employer, and actually the government updated these guidelines specifically for employees that work outside as well. I think it was Monday or Tuesday for going back to work. As an employer, if you've kept up to date with all the health and safety that you're supposed to be doing due to COVID-19, of course, an employee can arrive at work if they believe that they don't feel safe, they should talk to their employer. And that could be for whatever reason. So it might be the PPE, it might be the washing facilities, or it could be that they have to travel to work on public transport. Now, if they feel unsafe doing that, you know, it is within the government guidelines about how the employer should attempt to see if they can assist with that. Now, it might be that the work van goes past the end of their road, or they can walk to a certain bit to pick them up and they have to use the same van. So it's the same people, almost like that buddy system. So it's the same people all the time, that bubble, a work bubble for the use of a better word. But an employee, if they're shielding, because they could be shielding themselves, shielding doesn't actually technically end until the 30th of June, is they'll have to get a fit note if they are shielding, and they can call 111. They don't need to go to the GP for that. If it's more than that and they're really that they should be on a fit note, they need to contact their doctor. That doesn't mean they've got to go into the surgery. The doctors can do, they're doing them by Zoom, they're doing them by phone, and then they email through the fit note. If it is that actually, let's be honest, some people are feeling scared about going back to work. Less are feeling scared about going out to work if they're working outside, because it's well known now that if you're working outside, there's less chance as long as you can keep that 2-metre bubble. There's a lot of information from the government about working in pairs, that it should be the same 2 people in a van, for instance. So not different people going with different people every other day. Try and keep it to exactly the same people. So I suppose in a way, being partially sensible and having read the government guidelines is as your staff are going back to work, make sure they know what you've done.
Yep.
What you've set up to actually deal with this, what you've put in place, what will be different, what will be available. Then obviously, if they're saying they can't go back into work and you know they're not shielding, because you might not know that they're asthmatic or they've got to shield because their child's got cystic fibrosis. You may not know that as an employer because it's not necessarily relevant to what they'd be doing at any other time, but at the moment it is. So that's different. They can get a fit note. And basically it's asking that question. They'd have difficulty proving, and I'm sure your HR departments will be able to do this better than me because I've just read through the government guidelines that came through on Tuesday, is that as long as you've put everything in place, if that employee hasn't turned up at work and seen what you've done, hasn't been notified, how can they say that they don't feel safe in that workplace?
Yeah.
However, if they get to work and realise there's no hand washing facilities, there's nobody, everybody's got to work together and you're being mixed up all the time, you know, they've got a good cause there. So I think it's being open, giving them the advice and information, because it's the unknown that's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
And that's what's been scared. That is what's been the big thing about COVID, is it's totally unknown. And when the government and the NHS are saying this is unknown, nobody's in control of any of it. So put yourself in control, tell them what you've done, tell them what you're going to provide. If they've got a legitimate reason, well, you know what, they're going to have to get a fit. They're going to have to get a fit note. You're going to have to work around with them if it's a legitimate reason. And obviously, if it's somebody else in the household that's shielding, you are going to have to take that into account.
Yeah, brilliant, great, thanks, Helen. I mean, Kate, obviously listening to Helen there, is there anything, you might not have anything to say, but is there anything you'd like to follow on from today's presentation?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I think are really important, because obviously it's mostly, we're talking mostly to employers today, and it's that I'm responsible for looking after our partnerships. And hello, I know there's some partners in the room, so thank you very much. But I think one of the biggest things is sometimes organisations talk to me and say, we're a really good employer. and you can see that they're a really good employer. And, you know, my staff, I'd like to partner with Perennial, but my staff will never need your help. And I think that's it's one of those myths. And I always answer twofold, and I know Helen's going to chip in as well with this one. But firstly, we don't, as Helen's intimated, as an employer, you don't know everything about your staff. And there may be things that are very personal that they don't want to discuss with you, but it's really important that they have an anonymous, safe place that they can go and talk to people that are, if we're not experts in ourselves, we can signpost to absolute expert services. The second thing is that we sort of ask people, please encourage, have the posters up, and it's a subliminal thing. It's a, I hate to use the word attrition because it sounds negative, but people might see our posters, our cards, they might watch this. There might be several steps before they actually sort of contact us. And the third thing is that I would say is it's really, really important that people talk to people, companies talk to people about Perennial and what we do. And that's a sign of a good employer, not a bad employer, because you're giving your staff access to everything. We have a duty of care with your staff now. There's obviously the legislative employer's duty. But also there's the moral duty as well. But also one of the key things is we literally offer a cradle to grave service. So even to those employers that are right and think their staff don't need would never need to contact Perennial while they're working for them, we will look after them when they change jobs, when they and into retirement. And as I say, we've got one of the people that we help support is, how old did you say, Helen? 100, 103?
Yeah.
So and also it's the families of, so and so might feel quite comfortable about the way their life is working, but the partner is suffering or the children are suffering, and our help and services look after the children of as well, and dependents. And again, people forget that sometimes it is a spouse who contacts us and is eligible for our full care because they're married into or they're a partner of somebody in the industry. And that's really, really important, because, you know, once somebody said, oh, I want to help support children, and we support children as well.
It's an amazing thing. Horticulturalists do have children. It's quite surprising that lots of landscapers, landscape architects have children. I am one of them. You know, if we look at the whole family, if we only help the person who worked in the industry, it's no use if their wife's got cancer or they're really worried about all their children, or just, do you know what I mean? It's you've got to look at the whole family unit.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't go along through life in a little bubble all by yourself, don't you? That isn't life. No. And the services that we provide over the since services came in 2001, it's changed completely. So now the majority of the people that we help are below 50 and their families. And actually the highest industry within horticulture is landscapers, out well above everybody else. There's quite a lot of greenkeepers, but the majority are landscapers. And just to make it clear, it doesn't matter whether you're hard, soft, bit of each, we don't care. If you're a landscaper, you're a landscaper. That's it, you're in. But it's that whole family dynamic. And I think, you know, some people before furlough, they were coming out after Christmas, after winter, which, let's be honest, always costs you more. Never mind how much you might think it's never going to, it always does cost you more.
It does.
It always does. And then we went in. Now, for some people, that will have been fine. That won't have made any difference to them. You know, they're very controlled. That, you know, I'm not saying that they're good with their money. They just might not have to worry about it. Some people always have to worry about their money. You know, they're always thinking, oh my God, it's a 5-week month. And you know what? In your 20s, unless you're very lucky, when you're first starting out in life, particularly, or into your 30s, and you might get a mortgage or you're starving your children, you're always thinking about money. I don't care how much you earn, you're always thinking about money because you're just spending more. So as you go into, as we went into shutdown, into lockdown, the majority of people's income just plummeted in some cases, or definitely went down by 20%. Let's be honest, if you were on quite a high wage, it only went up to a certain amount, so you weren't necessarily just losing 20%. If you were on a salary of 70k, by God, you plummeted. You're dipping into your savings. So it's affected everybody in some way. But if you were just managing, and then you've got a drop in income, and then you've got your children eating you out of house and home, and then you've got the telly on continually, that is money going out when you've got less money coming in. At some point, that's going to be a problem unless you can start doing something about it. And there's no two ways about that. And also, we work in, it's an industry that the majority of the work is done spring, summer, autumn. We've lost the whole of spring. Spring has gone, hasn't it? Do you know what I mean? Some people have been able to carry on working, not everybody. So it's that shift in dynamic that some people have already come to us for advice and information who never would have come to us before, ever. And actually, it hasn't been about, a lot of people think we do grants. Perennial does grants when you're in a crisis. It's actually one of the smaller things that we do. We do it, of course we do it, but it's one of the smaller things that we do. It's actually building a plan for somebody that's bespoke to them and their family. We work together with that plan, and the whole aim of the plan is that they're in control and out of whatever that issue is at the end. Even if it's an issue where maybe it might be excessively sad that somebody's got terminal cancer, there is only one end there. But you know what? There's still a way of managing that and planning that. So actually, yes, it's very sad, but if you've got that under control and plan, you can come out the other side, if that makes sense. That plan makes you feel in control. That plan stops you plummeting into severe mental health.
Brilliant. Thank you, Helen. I'm in danger of losing my voice. But I think we haven't had any more questions in. So I think obviously we're slightly earlier than the hour, but I don't think that's always a bad thing. I mean, what I will say to members listening, obviously, if they have anything that perhaps they didn't want to use this chat function to do, then obviously they can contact me, or the details are still on the screen. I've left them up, so it'd probably be more important really to contact Perennial, because you guys, as you say, you've got the expert help that they need. Obviously, Barley doesn't have that kind of expert help. We're a trade association, and we can point them in the right direction. If they want to come to us, they can. But I think it's important to say, no, please don't delay. If you're sitting on something, or you know of someone who's sitting on something, then speak out, and do it and try and get that support.
Exactly. And we would be we'll be really keen to hear from people. If you want posters, if you want any of that to get them up in the workplace, please just ask us. If you want something small and bespoke that you can at least just say to your employee, go on the website, look at this bit, as for yourself a Barley, tell us, we will do it for you.
Brilliant. Yeah, and it is really important to reiterate the confidentiality to the point that there is no way, obviously Helen is our head of casework, but on my side, or even Barley's side, there is no way that we will know. The only time that I know of people that have been supported by ourselves is when they choose to tell me, and that's lovely. And the big thing again, Helen said, is we don't deal in sticking plasters. We've got them as an emergency, but it's a long-term relationship. And again, that's a lovely thing that people that I have come across that have said, where they've said, oh, actually Perennial supported me or a member of my family. They talk about the length and the holistic approach we've taken. you know, in looking after that. So it is absolutely confidential, and that's really important to get over, one for yourselves, but also in terms of your staff, to reiterate that there is no physical way that we will know about it.
I think that's a good point, Kate, especially for employees, because they do worry that it's going to get back to work, especially if it's a mental health thing, stress thing. Is they worry that's going to affect them at work. What you're going to tell them, and we're not going to tell them anything. Even if it's, you've said yes, you send my details into Perennial, and then yes, they give permission. The only thing we would say is we would confirm to, we'll contact them, and that would be it. Nothing else would go back. We're not allowed to now. We were not allowed to a GDPR anyway. Absolutely not. But people still are slightly concerned. It's totally, completely confidential. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I think all left to say is thank you.
Get to know.
No, as we were saying, we don't unless they choose to tell us. As you're saying, absolutely. So
yeah.
But thank you so much both, and also an opportunity for Barley to say thank you to all the work that you do at Perennial. You know, it's a lifesaver for many. So we do appreciate what we have with you.
But also thank you to Barley and some of our partners in the audience for supporting the work that we do as well. It's the one thing is tell people about us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And implore everybody watching to tell people about the help that's out there for them should they need it. But thank you very much.
Not a problem. So thank you. So I'll end the broadcast now for everyone watching. So I think with this system, it suddenly just cuts everyone off, and that's it. Everyone gets booted, so it will just go black. But but thank you to both our presenters, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks then. Bye both. Bye everyone.